to take this opportunity to introduce you to Louet's littlest loom, the David. This loom happens to be Jan Louet's favorite loom. It is named David after the biblical story of David and Goliath, small but mighty. The David comes standard as an 8-shaft loom, and it comes in 2 weaving widths. The 70 centimeters is 27 inches wide, and the 90 centimeters is 35 inches wide. It comes with the built-in rattle. It has an overhead beater. It comes with an optional friction brake if you so desire. You can get it with a sectional warp beam or a second warp beam, or both if you want. And the unique thing about this loom is that it is a sinking jack. Most jack looms are rising shed looms. This is a jack loom, and it's a sinking jack loom. And I'm going to show you in just a moment how that system works. Here's how we can have a look at the heart of the matter. This little pin I'm pulling out is the blocking pin. It has a little hole, and this is where it lives when it's not in use. But you can also use it to pop the lid off here. So I'm pushing up on this little lid, and I'm going to pull out the shelf so that we can look inside. Okay, what we see are 8 separate springs attached to 8 separate cams by a length of Texsolve cord. What happens when I step on a treadle? I step on the treadle and it starts to pull the cams, they twist and the spring opens, and boing, the whole thing's down, and then I take my foot off the treadle and the springs cause everything to pop back up. So I'm going to do this one more time. We step on the treadle. The first part of stepping on this treadle requires the most amount of effort, but as soon as we get to the halfway point, from there on the cam assists in the continuation of the treadle moving down, and the treadling action is extremely easy. When I take my foot off the treadle, I'm doing it ever so slowly. The springs retract right at that position. They retract and bring all the pattern shafts back up to their upper position. Okay, now I'm going to show you what this blocking pin is for. All of our pattern shafts are in their upper position, and we want to move them to their mid position, their neutral position, so that we can go down and tie up the treadles. So I take my blocking pin and I insert it into the hole in the front of the shelf up here, and I start to move the first cam along until the pin goes into the hole, and you just find it. So it's gone all the way through that first cam. I start to turn my second cam, pops right in. My third cam pops right in, fourth, all the way along until we're through all the cams. Then we have to push on the whole kit and caboodle until our pin comes right out there. Now everything is in neutral position and we're ready to go down to the floor and tie up the treadles. Here we are about to tie up our David loom. This is a very, very easy loom to tie up. There are 8 treadles. No, there's 8 pattern shafts and 10 treadles, but there are 8 lambs, just single lambs. We put a tie-up cord on whichever lamb we want to activate. In this case, we have one on 2, 4, 6, and 8, and I'm going to bring those tie-up cords down to the treadle and attach them. There are 8 screws on the treadle. I'll take the tie-up cord from the second lamb and put it on the second screw. I'll take the tie-up cord on the 4th lamb and put it on the 4th screw. The 6th lamb on the 6th screw, and the 8th on the 8th. And it's that easy. Now I'm going to come over here and do this treadle. I lift it up. The screws face in on this set of treadles. They face in on this set of treadles. So it's very easy. I pick this up. I have a tie-up cord on lamb 1. I put it on the first screw. I put 3 on the 3rd screw. I put 5 on the 5th and 7 on the 7th. Ta-da! So she's all tied up. Sometimes with Texsolve cord, you can have a smidgen of slack in the cord. So Louët has devised these cool little plastic pegs that tighten up the cords just by minute amounts. If you were to put 6 little pegs in a row in the cord, it would amount to 1 Texsolve hole. We are now ready to move up top, remove the blocking pin, and get ready to weave. I'm going to put the lid back in. It just fits into this little groove like that. You press it in and it pops right down. Then I'm going to take my pin out. All my pattern shafts are going to come flying up, and I'm going to drop the pin there to store it. And I can sit down and start weaving. I feel like I'm sitting at a grand piano. Get my tails just right. When you weave with an overhead beater, you have to adapt your technique a little bit. If the beater is in the wrong position, then you don't get an optimum shed to throw your shuttle through. If the beater's this far forward, we have a tiny little shed. The further our beater goes back, the greater our shed becomes. So this is a tiny little loom, and it has a very large shed, but the beater has to be in this position. So I've adapted my technique slightly to account for that. This hand will hold the beater. The other hand throws it through. I'm going to just attach this new green. I'm going to beat. Comes quite far forward. Change your shed. If you need to beat a second time, here's where you do it. Beater back. So the beater is held by my hand, ready to accept the shuttle when it comes through. Comes through, beat, change. Beater back. This hand automatically goes to this position, holds the beater back, and is ready to accept the shuttle when it comes through. So you can build up your technique and your speed quite nicely to accommodate the overhead beater. You have a nice action with this little beater. All right, I'm ready to advance my warp now. So I'm going to reach down here, lift up on my handle, it releases the brake, and I can advance forward. If I don't have enough, I can do it again and advance forward. Check to make sure that my beater reaches and everything's hunky-dory. Off we go again. There's a few more things I'd like to share with you about this loom. It's a nice compact loom with a big shed. It has a lot of leg room underneath it. I'm weaving the full width. It's easy to weave on, and it's highly portable. The back beam folds up to the castle, and I'm going to show you how to do that in just a minute. I'm going to take the tension off this loom and fold the back beam to the castle so that we can transport it easily. Again, I'm just going to lift up on here. That releases my tension. Then I'm going to undo the wing nut at the front here. There's one on both sides of the loom. So I'm going to take this one all the way off, and then I'm going to run over to the other side and take that one off, and I'll be back in a minute. There goes that. Now, this bolt pulls right out. Gone. Haha, I bet you thought it was going to fall on the floor. I'll pull that one out. And the whole thing stays up because right here, between this piece of wood and this piece of wood, there's a little rubber dowel that goes in and the screw holds it, and it allows me to do this. Cool, huh? I can at this point take up all that extra slack at the front. I'll put my shuttle up here so it doesn't go flying. Now that in itself could hold this beam in place, but if someone lifted up on this, then this will just fall back down again. That's how you open it. So I like to use a piece of seine twine. I put it through this eye hole here, half hitch it, and then if you bring this forward, you can use that to wrap around and hold everything nice and snug to the capsule, like this. Now it does make sense to take the tension up on the other side as well, but that in itself holds it. We can still take the tension up here, and should that ratchet come undone, we don't have to worry about the back beam falling and opening on us. You want to store those rods back in the holes so you don't lose them, and they're there when you open it up. So it's very easy. Takes but a moment, and your loom can go on the road with ya. This is the Delta. She is the grand dame of the Louet treadle looms. She's big, she's robust, she comes with all kinds of regular built-ins, and you can get a lot of optional equipment for her. The Delta comes in two weaving widths. It comes as a 110 centimeter loom, which is 43 inches, and she comes as a 130 centimeter loom, which is 51 inches. And you buy this loom standard with 8 pattern shafts. You can get a 4-shaft extension that takes it to 12. And if you want to have a lot more pattern shafts and still have treadles, you can specially order this loom with 16 pattern shafts. Let's see, she comes with, her built-ins are her rattle on the top. She has a cloth protector in the front. She has adjustable feet so that you can level her to any floor. She's got the lovely handle on the front of the beater. And she has a friction brake. You can get for her optional equipment, and you can get a sectional beam, a second beam, and a flying shuttle. This loom is a parallel countermarch loom, just like the spring loom. And in many ways it functions exactly the same, except that it has rear slung treadles. That's the major difference between this loom and the spring. The fact that she has rear slung treadles and she's so much bigger. The first thing I'd like to bring your attention to is the brake system on this loom. When we looked at the spring loom, we saw that there was a ratchet and a pawl system that controlled the back beam. On this loom, we have a true friction brake on it. It's a cable, and the cable needs to come when you're standing in this position or kneeling in this position. The brake cable needs to wrap around the drum in a counterclockwise direction. The cable is attached to this threaded bolt and barrel nut, and this is how we increase or decrease the tension on the friction brake. So I've got it wrapped around here 2.5 times, I believe, or no, it's just 2 times. And then it comes straight down and it pops into a tiny little groove on the back of the treadle. It's as easy as pie. Now, when you stand up and you're warping your loom, you depress this pedal and it takes the friction off of the brake drum. Comes with a lovely handle. It just pops right out, slides back in, so if you don't want it there, it can be gone in a second. And then we step on the brake pedal and we wind on our warp. When I'm warping this loom all by myself, I wind, I go to the back of the loom, pull down on my paper just like I did with the spring. I run to the front, or I walk to the front, I tension my warp, I come back here, I wind a few more turns, go back at the back, pull down on the paper, go to the front. So it's my little routine, and I can warp this loom all by myself. The warp is going over top of the loom, just like it did in the demonstration with the spring. The cloth protector is another wonderful feature on this loom. When you're weaving with wider width looms, this one happens to be a Delta 110, but this loom also comes as a 130, so that's 51 inches weaving width, 51 inch weaving width. When you're weaving on wider looms, your body tends to lean a lot more when you go from side to side. And so the cloth protector is this great device that protects our cloth from us. Right now I've got it on the loom, and normally at this point in the weaving you would not have it on the loom. You would take it off to wind on, but I wanted to have it here for you to see at the very beginning. It pops on and off quite easily with these two little screws. I'm going to put it up here, and then I'm going to weave in a few minutes, and when the apron rod crosses over the breast beam, passes around the breast beam and gets down here, we can put that back on, and our cloth protector will remain in that position for the rest of the weaving. We have to take it off when we take the finished cloth off, but it stays on until then. The cloth protector is also on the Mikado. You can see the lovely grain in the wood here. This is ash. The Delta is made out of ash. The Mikado is made out of ash. The David and the spring looms are made out of beech. Right now, I'm going to put the blocking pin back in. On the spring, which is a parallel countermarch loom, we had a blocking pin, and we have one here on the Delta as well. Right here is where we stick the pin in, and I have to stand on the side this time because the loom is bigger. And I pick up the cords where they're marked. When the loom comes from the factory, all of those black marks are on the Texsolve cord already, so you don't have to worry about what to pick up. You pick up what you're supposed to pick up. It is making all of the pattern shafts become the same level, which will enable us to tie it up more easily. I just slide on. I'm going to move them over a little bit, and then we just pop that pin into the hole at the back of the castle, and it holds everything nice and rigid. There we go. When you look down here now, you can see that all of your cords are nice and straight. Your short cords are on your lower lambs, your long cords are on your upper lambs. I'm going to pull the pin, and there they are. That's how it usually looks. So you have all of these loops happening. That's normal. What happens when you depress on these treadles, and these treadles are rear slung treadles. The reason that the treadles come from the rear on the Delta is because it's a much larger loom, and also it's available as a 16 shaft loom. So you need to have more leverage with your leg to lift that many pattern shafts. When you can press down with the ball of your foot, you have more leverage on the treadle, and so it's easier to treadle with them slung on the back because this loom can go to 12 and 16 pattern shafts. So that's why that is different. Here with these rear slung treadles, you can come in and see that we have our screws along here, just as we have on all of the treadles on Louet looms. The tie-up cords come from the lambs down to the screws. There are 4 extra screws here on this treadle because these 4 empty holes will hold the screws if we put the extension kit to bring this loom up to 12 shafts. Everything's there, ready and waiting. Now, when I depress on the treadle, you'll see what happens. This little piece of wood here moves. I'm going to depress this treadle using my little finger. There's a spring on the back of it that controls its movement. When the entire treadle is depressed as far as it will go, we have that magnificent shed that all Louet looms are known for. When the treadle comes back up, all of our cords go into their rested position, and so there's these loops. But they don't get caught because they're securely latched around here, and there's nothing for them to get caught on as the end of the treadle is up here. So it's a wonderful, easy action. I've brought my bench in, I've put my header in, and I'm all ready to weave. The adjustments that you would make at this point are the same adjustments that you would have made on the spring loom. Number one, you would have to test your shed to make sure that your beater was sitting at the right height, and you do that by adjusting the feet at the bottom, just like we did on the spring. I have done that, and we can see that the bottom layer of my warp is sitting nicely on the shuttle race. You just raise the whole beater until that is happening. The next thing that we need to do is to adjust the floating breast beam. It adjusts the same way as we adjusted on the spring. What I'm going to do is I'm going to count the number of holes in the Texolve, and I'm going to reattach it to the screw so that this is brought into this position. I can push it to that position, but I want it to be held by the Texolve in the spring. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to start with 8. I'll start with 9 and just see what happens. I'll move it to 9 on this side. And it's come in a lot. I think I'll put a bit more tension on it so it's perfectly straight. So that was 9, 10, 11. Let's try 12. Come in a lot. I'm going to do it on the other side. I'll be back in 1 second. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side because that may be one reason why it's still out here a little bit. So I'll be right back. And there, much better, much better. And now my uprights on my floating breast beam are perpendicular to the floor, so our tension is set and I'm ready to weave. I don't have the cloth protector on yet, and I'm waiting to weave enough so that my apron comes around, and then I can put it on and it will protect my cloth. So here goes. Whoops. Got to get into weaving a wider width mood. Throw that shuttle. Look at that shed. That huge, big shed. This loom has the same handle on the beater, makes it just a delight to always grab. Oops, maybe I should take my jewelry off too. Now, you can see here that we have a full leg extension. If this is difficult for you, that's not a problem because you can get blocks that go on these treadles and raise them up to where your leg will extend to easily and naturally. There's also the 10 adjustments on the bench. So between the blocks and your 10 adjustments on the bench, this can be adjusted and fine-tuned to the finest degree. It's time for me to advance my warp now. As we can see here, we have our brake pedal. It comes towards the weaver. It's on a nice angle. Another bit of wonderful, innovative engineering from the team at Louët. On many looms, your foot has to come on a straight angle, and that's difficult. Here, I just have to reach out to it because it is reaching into me. I depress the pedal. I ratchet forward, take my foot off the pedal, continue to ratchet forward until my floating breast beam is perpendicular to the floor. And now I know that my tension is exactly the same as it was before I advanced my warp. Now when I step on a treadle, you can see that in action. I step on a treadle and the whole breast beam tilts so that the top of it goes in towards, and as I take my foot off the treadle, it comes back to neutral position. That means that when my warp is at this tension right now in neutral, I put my foot on the treadle, the warp opens, the shed is formed. The tension is exactly the same on that warp when the shed is open or when the shed is closed. I finished weaving, and now I can put the cloth protector back on. The warp has come around, the apron rod has come around the breast beam, and it's down here now, so this can go on. So I've got it here. It's very easy to install. You just plunk her on like that. You have these two nice knobs. I put the knob in first and look in there and find my hole. And it just goes on lickety split. This fits in there like that. You can find the place. It just screws in like that. And now we're ready to protect our cloth. There, that's on, and our cloth is protected. Well, I finished weaving now, and I want to move this loom to another room. So I'm going to show you how to fold the back beam to the center castle so that you can move it easily. The first thing I'm going to do is bring the beater forward, like that. Then I'm going to go and step on the brake pedal to release the tension. And then I'm going to come all the way around here. I'm going to lift up on this upright and this one, and I push the whole thing in like that. There's two little pegs here that prevent it from falling. If I want to, I can take up all that warp slack on the front, and it holds the whole thing just like that. Now, I've got my paper all tied up to my little eye screws here. I could put a string on these eye screws to lock the whole thing in place, but now the loom is much, much more easily moved. She's a beauty. This is the Louet Megado, one of several dobby looms that Louet manufactures. Mikado means mega dobby. Many, many pattern shafts and a dobby system to manipulate those pattern shafts. This loom comes with either 16 pattern shafts or 32 pattern shafts. Here you can see that we have 32 pattern shafts on the loom. Once you've decided how many pattern shafts you want, the next thing you have to decide is what type of dobby system you want to purchase. These two items are purchased separately. You can either purchase an electronic interface or a mechanical dobby to run this loom. The loom comes in 3 weaving widths. It comes as a 70 centimeter loom, which is 27 inches. It comes as a 110 centimeter loom, which is 43 inches, and it comes as a 130 centimeter loom, which is 51 inches wide. In addition to those 3 widths, you can purchase for this loom a sectional beam, a second warp beam, a flying shuttle, a bench with 10 different height adjustments. I should mention that this loom also has adjustable feet on the bottom so that you can level it to any floor that you happen to put the loom on. It has the handle mounted in the center of the beater, which allows us to beat from center. This beater is also adjustable so that our shuttle race will always support the bottom layer of our shed. We have the cloth protector on the front so that our bodies don't rub against our cloth. It has the floating breast beam system that will ensure that you will always have constant tension on your warp, whether the shed is open or closed, and every time you advance your warp, your tension will be the same as it was before you advanced your warp. All of these wonderful features are also found on many of our treadle looms. The first thing I'd like to share with you is how this loom gets its wonderful countermarch shed. We have one large treadle underneath the loom here. And I'll come down here and show you. This treadle, when I depress it with my thumb, causes the back beam to rise. That action of the treadle depressing, the back beam rising, it not only rises, but it also comes forward a tiny little bit. Well, that in conjunction with the pattern shafts rising creates the countermarch shed. So even though we have a 32 shaft loom and a depth on the total loom of 51 inches, we still get that magnificent shed, and it's always the same. When I've got the dobby system attached, I'll be able to show you how all of that is working. But right now I just want to talk to you about how this works. There's a huge long arm here, and because this arm is so long, we have great leverage. That's another reason why it's so easy to depress this and raise the back beam. If, however, it was difficult for you, you can get springs that attach to hooks back here. If we attach this spring down here to the very first hook, this gives us the smallest amount of assist when we step on the treadle. When we step on the treadle, the spring closes, and as the spring closes, it assists in the lift. So that's even easier than we had it before. Now, the maximum assist is at this point. We put this here, and we stretch this all the way over there, and the spring is opened up wide. Now when I step on the treadle, the spring closes even more, and boy, I could do this with my eyelash at this point. However, when you have this much assist, it's very easy to have a bounce to it. And this can be a problem when the electronic interface is on. If it bounces, it might tell the sensor to move forward to the next pick and you're not ready for it. So these are things that you have to practice with and play around with just to find the exact amount of assist that's necessary to help you without advancing your electronic interface system. So that's the first of the 3 important functions that this treadle has. Weavers don't all come in one size. We're all different sizes and heights. So we need to be able to adjust the height of this treadle because you do have to extend your leg. Right here we have a bottom set of holes. We could move this bar down here if we had very long legs. If we have medium-sized legs, we can put this bar here, and I have short legs, so it's up at the top. If you're a really short weaver, or if you're a weaver with really short legs and this needs to be even higher, Louët manufactures a system of blocks that go on here and a bar that sits on top of those blocks. Those blocks are 1 inch, and so you could add 1 inch, your treadle would be 1 inch higher. You could add 2 blocks, your treadle would be 2 inches higher. All of these things assist us with our lift and our leg stretch. I'd like to draw your attention to the angle of these pattern shafts. Here we have a straight stick, but the pattern shafts are sitting on this angle. The reason for this is the depth between pattern shaft number 1 and pattern shaft number 32. There has to be an angle built in so that when we step on a shed, shaft 32, the thread on shaft 32 is sitting at the same height as the thread threaded on shaft 1. I'd like to share with you a little trick I've got for changing heddles. I'm going to look in here to the pattern shaft that I need to move heddles around on. You need to be able to access the individual pattern shafts. So you come into the dobby box here and you find the dobby hook that is attached to the pattern shaft that you need to move heddles on. If you push forward on it and at the same time lift the back beam, the knife comes down, grabs the screw on that dobby hook and raises the pattern shaft. Now I want to look down below, and I'm going to now come down here and take a cone of yarn and just stick it in there and hold it. Now I can use both hands to get at the pattern shaft and move my heddles around. For the ease of the camera, we've raised pattern shaft number 32. What I want to do first is pull the Texsolve cord out of this groove, and then I just pop the metal arm out of the top of the pattern shaft. I have my heddles ready to go on. They would go on like this. I would pop the metal arm back in, put the Texsolve in. I don't need any heddles here right now, so I'm not going to put those on, but I wanted to show you how to do this. So to insert this metal arm back in, we put a little bow on it, and we watch it go through this center hole. And right behind that is a hole that goes into the top of the shaft. If you want to make sure that this is in that hole, you can see the little elbow here through the hole. We know that's back in, and now I'm going to slide the Texsolve cord back into the slot, and voila, there we have it. It's that simple. What we've done up here, we of course have to do down here to attach the bottom heddles. There's one more thing I want to remind you about your heddles. Because we have so many pattern shafts in such a small space, When you have a lot of extra heddles left over on your pattern shaft, you don't want to leave them clumped all up on the side like this. On this particular warp, I'm only using the first 20 pattern shafts. I'm not using the back. So in this case, it doesn't matter. They're not going to interfere because they're not in action. But if these pattern shafts were in action, we have a great number of heddles on adjacent pattern shafts, and they will bind as the pattern shafts move up and down. So what you need to do is remove extra heddles if those pattern shafts are in action. Well, now we're ready to see how the whole thing works. This is the brain of the loom. The brain requires power, so it gets plugged into a wall. The brain also requires software to make it work, and that's attached to the computer. The computer gets to live right up here on this wonderfully large shelf. I'm going to take the electronic interface off so that you can see how it works. Now, this is what it looks like on the inside. I have a 32 shaft loom, so there are 32 little hammers that pop out if my computer tells those hammers to pop out. Right here you can see our sensors. We have a lower sensor and an upper sensor. When the knife with the magnet on it passes the bottom sensor, it deactivates the current shed. When the knife with the magnet passes the upper sensor, it activates the next shed. Right here you can see the magnet on the back of the knife, and this magnet passes the sensors, and the sensors send the information. There we go. All right, we'll get this back on. There she goes. Okay. On the back side of the electronic interface is the on-off switch. My hand is sitting on that, my right hand is sitting on that, and at the front of the interface there is a button. I'm going to press the button in, and then I'm going to turn on the electronic interface, and we can see everything cycling through from 1 right through to 32. Our electronic interface is working perfectly. Here we have a perfect shot of the knife coming down, grabbing the screws on the dobby hooks and raising the appropriate shed. It's a very smooth action, and it's a very light treadle. The Mikado and Octado interfaces operate with either Macs or PCs. There are a variety of different software programs that have drivers for Louet interfaces, such as Fiberworks, PixieWeave, Weave-It, and there's a few more. Software is a very personal preference, so you need to find a software program that works for you. Traditionally, all electronic dobbies have communicated through serial ports, which have caused problems with new computers and electronic dobbies. Louet North America has developed a new circuit board for our interface so that they communicate through a resident USB port instead of running through serial to USB converters. This will reduce port security issues. Here I am weaving at my Mikado. I'm going to review for a minute just all the things that we saw that treadle do. The loom has 1 treadle as opposed to 2. Most dobby looms come with 2 treadles. Ours has 1, but the 1 treadle has 3 functions. The 1 treadle raises the back beam to give us the parallel countermarch shed. When the treadle is depressed, the knife which is attached to that treadle grabs the screws that are protruding from our interface. It catches them, we go straight down to the bottom, and we have this wonderful shed. Now the treadle comes up, returns the knife up to the very top, the magnet passes the sensor, the next set of screws pop out, The knife comes down as I depress on the treadle, and we have our next shed. I've had my Mikado now for, gosh, probably 6-7 years. And I marvel at this loom constantly. With 32 pattern shafts on a loom that's only 51 inches deep, it's just remarkable. I have a huge shed. I have the floating breast beam that constantly maintains my tension. The handle on the beater, all of my favorite features are on this loom. This is the Octado. She is our 8-shaft dobby loom. The Octa stands for 8 and the Do stands for dobby. The Octado can be purchased with either an electronic interface or a mechanical dobby system. You have to make a choice there. She's available in 3 sizes, a 70 centimeter, which is 27 inches, a 90 centimeter, which is 35 inches, or a 110 centimeter loom, which is 43-inch weaving width. You can get her with a second beam, a sectional beam. Only other optional equipment is the bench, and the bench has 10 different height adjustments. The Octado comes with a whole lot of standard features that are found on many of the other Louet looms. It comes with the handle on the beater, the built-in rattle across the top, the marvelous floating breast beam system, a frictional brake. This loom was designed for weavers who don't want to have a lot of pattern shafts and who don't want to have to get underneath their loom to tie it up. When you use either the mechanical dobby or the electronic interface, you don't have to do that. The Octado is very much like the Mikado. It is made out of beech rather than ash, and as beech is a lighter wood, the entire frame of this loom is lighter. What I'm going to demonstrate for you on this loom is the differences between the electronic interface on the Octado as compared to the Mikado. This is the Octado's electronic interface. It fits on the back of the loom and pops off quite easily, just like this. Now we can see the placement of the magnet. The magnet on the Octado is in a different place than it was on the Mikado. It's attached to the cord that is attached to the knife. I'm going to put the box back on, and then we can see some other features. There. I'd like to show you this handy little gizmo that is attached back here. This piece of Texsolve cord runs through this eye hook on the brake pedal. I've marked it where it works perfectly after testing it a few times. Now, when you go to wind your warp on, it's very difficult to have your foot up here on the brake pedal and to be winding at the same time. So, if you take this hook and depress on the brake pedal, hook it on to the bottom of your treadle here, your treadle arm, then you can move your back beam wherever you need to move it without having to have your foot way up in the air. So that is a great assist. To take it off, you just push down on the brake pedal and pop it off. And then you can finish tightening up. While I'm down here, I want to draw your attention to this Texsolve cord that comes down to a threaded plastic screw with a nut on the end, a white nut on the end. This is the cord that controls the height of the knife on the dobby system. If you need to adjust the height of the knife, you can do it by moving it along the Texsolve cord here in 1 centimeter increments, or if you need to make very, very fine adjustments, all you have to do is turn this white nut, open it or close it, and you get very fine movement. It's very important that the knife be positioned perfectly. This is how we adjust it. There are many reasons to buy a dobby loom. Either you want to have a lot of pattern shafts like you've got on the Megado to design great fabrics, Or you want to have a smaller loom, a loom with 8 pattern shafts, and by the way, you can design lovely fabric with 8 pattern shafts. The bonus with this loom, as with the Mikado, is that you get to stay in one position. You've got one treadle. It's easy on your body. You don't have this huge span of treadles underneath your loom that you're trying to navigate. Life is simple. Your treadling's all taken care of by the computer. The loom is wonderful. The Octado has all those features that we've discussed and looked at in all of the other looms. The floating breast beam, the ability to keep that tension perfect all the time, and the marvelous big shed that's to be found on every Louet loom. We hope that you have enjoyed our presentation, and we're confident that Louet has a loom for you. Why don't you join the Louet team and make it your own? Visit our website at www.louet.com to see our full range of products or to find a retailer near you. Step on it again, it should work.
Face the camera and say it.
I don't know why this is happening.
I joined the Louet team and I made it my own.